continuing on with the youth novels of Louise Fitzhugh, after her first novel, Harriet the Spy, was a success, she wrote two more involving those characters. We'll talk about the first one here. It was called The Long Secret. The Long Secret is a really neat children's novel. Fitzhugh really uses an enormous amount of indirect storytelling in it. It's very unusual for a book that's, supposedly aimed at like 12 and 13-year-olds. And Harriet is in it and is a main character, but the main character is her friend Beth Ellen. And the premise is that Beth Ellen is summering somewhere on the New England coast with her grandmother, who's her caretaker. And Harriet is there nearby with her family, and the two of them, still meet up and do stuff together. And the start of the book is someone is leaving poison pen notes for people in the area with quotes from literature and the Bible, just like written typed on a typewriter. So like, you go out to your mail and you find like this little card and it says something like, the wages of sin are death. And it's not clear who's doing it, and Harriet decides they should try to figure this out. But Harriet is not a deeply focused person, and in addition to figuring this out, she has other things that she wants to do. But the big pressure of the book is not really the poison pen letters. It's the return of Beth Ellen's mother. Beth Ellen's mother seems to be a sort of wandering socialite, one of these well-off cafe society people who never works and just sort of floats around from one glamorous spot to another, living on their connections and their friends who have nice houses that can put them up. You get the impression that Beth Ellen's mother wasn't always like this, but that's why she's not taking care of Beth Ellen. She really doesn't have any interest in taking care of Beth Ellen. And Beth Ellen's shyness and quiet and her demureness make a lot of sense against this background we learn where her she does get decent love from her grandmother, but it's her grandmother, and she knows that that's not a typical way to grow up, and she feels this kind of deep devaluedness because she doesn't have kind of the steady love of a parent behind her, and that feeling of being wanted in the world that people rely upon to build their mature identity. So having her mother return and seeing how her mother thinks of her, and not much. Her mother doesn't have much extra interest in her. Her mother has a new boyfriend or a new husband, I don't remember which, it doesn't really matter, a new guy, and they're staying in the area, and you get the feeling that they're trying to maybe get a hold of some of Beth Ellen grandmother's money. I'm not sure how overt a theme that is, but it's definitely a subtext at the least, is they're not rich, they're parasitic hangers-on of the rich, and they have to sort of dance the right way and use the right words and dress the right way in order to keep their kind of relatively frail positions so that everything doesn't fall apart. Beth Ellen's interested in her mother because she hasn't really known her. She hasn't seen her for years. Her grandmother wants to protect her a little bit, but her grandmother is a nice person, but she's not 100% on the ball, and she doesn't seem to realize what contact with her mother will quite mean for Beth Ellen. She just hopes everything will go okay and that maybe Beth Ellen's mother will take an interest in her and have grown up a little as a person, which, she hasn't. And the thing with Beth Ellen seems to be, she sort of seems to see Beth Ellen as a potential useful accessory to her life, that maybe if she can get Beth Ellen cleaned up and going to the right clubs and living like her, that somehow this will help her out. So she's not putting Beth Ellen anywhere close to first in her sense of obligation. There's some pretty good scenes between these people as Beth Ellen's mother's selfishness sort of crackles against other people in the community. There's a subtext to the book, and this comes in with the stuff with Harriet. We're not always in Beth Ellen's head. Sometimes we're in Harriet's head, and we go back and forth pretty smoothly, which is neat. That's another good thing that this book can teach young readers, is how to follow a novel that moves around from character to character. The character you're supposed to follow and identify with changes. So Harriet finds out that Beth Ellen's mother's in town, and she's fascinated by this for obvious Harriet, I want to know everything about how people tick kind of reasons. And she also finds out that her parents knew Beth Ellen's mother before Beth Ellen's mother left town, and that there's an implication she feels that she might have even had some kind of relationship with her dad, that Beth Ellen's mother and her dad might have been, involved in some way. And Harriet has to find all this out. So she more or less deceives her mom into a place where she knows Beth Ellen's mother will be, because she just wants to see what will happen. This is Harriet at her most ruthless 12 or 13. I just have to figure this out. Harriet's mother doesn't like this thing, but she's trying to be a good mom to Harriet and do the things that Harriet wants to do. And then when they have this confrontation, she's very polite, but there's a lot of frostiness, and Harriet finds this completely fascinating. And there's this good moment where Harriet's mother is like, Harriet, what do you get out of all this? Why do you want to what do you want to understand? What sort of secrets do you think are waiting? And Harriet throws her arm wide and says, I want to know everything. And then she just starts laughing, and her mom laughs, and it's funny. It's a moment of self-knowledge and revealing that makes you like Harriet again all over, because she's aware of her own kind of compulsions, and she knows she doesn't take herself too seriously. But for Beth Ellen, of course, this is pretty lethal this summer. It's also the summer when she starts going through puberty and getting her period, which were topics not common to kids' novels of the 60s. And in general, this is like the pivot of her life. Is she going to, as an adult and as a youth, keep going along this path of sort of quiet and demureness and not wanting to get in anyone's way and just making herself small and out of the way? Or is she going to sort of grapple with the reality around her, and if so, in what way? In a healthy way or an unhealthy way? I will try not to spoilerize anything. I don't want to. This is a good book. It should be read. It should still be in print. But Beth Ellen eventually finds a way to change in the way that she would like to. She's able to abandon some of her defensiveness and her letting other people make decisions for her and her sense of her low value. And at the end of the book, you get the feeling that things are going to get better for her, that she has some confidence in her own choices and in her own values, which is a great, fantastic message that you'd want to get. You want to leave a book for youth with something like that, especially for that point in life when you remember when you're 13 or 14 and puberty starts and everything that used to just be natural and easy now feels like it's full of questions and problems. So it's nice to see a book with a character who really had a rough hand dealt them and who has a lot of potential pitfalls. You'd like to see her negotiate through them and come to a better approach on what her future will be. The Long Secret, Louise Fitzhugh. 2 more to talk about. We'll get to those next.